Well, hello there, everybody. Happy Prosperity Day. It's better than calling it Monday. But anyway, we're here, and despite the fact that they jack with the time, I don't get it. Maybe there was a time where we needed the time for agriculture because I think that's where it came from. Some would say the war, but we're in neither of those. So why do we change these clocks back? I don't know. I mean, sucks, but that's just my opinion. How are y'all doing? Good to see you. See the chat room is a buzzing, so welcome everybody. Thank you to dropping in, turning on, and tuning in because it's fun. And I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So many people out there. Hey, Rick, what's up, brother? So let me just speak. Matt, new subscriber. Well, thank you, sir. Much honored. Hey, Brian, what's up, brother? Good to see you lost in space. Scotty boy always makes the room better. Hey, there's Nina making the glow. Truth co-op. Diana, how are you? Salutations right back at you. Um, Fireflies, good to see you. I hear Chloe is off to the uh, funeral today. So, whoever it was, Chloe, we wish them the best on the other side. Gilbert, good to see you, brother. And Disobey AD, thank you. Said the picture brought him in. Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? So, was Little Red Riding Hood this little innocent little gal? I mean, come on. When you think about it, she's out in the middle of the woods. You don't think that she would realize that? She had to be hiding something. There's a reason why she wasn't afraid of the big bad wolf. She was the wolf. So it's just me. Ginger, hello, Lauren. How are you, sweetie? Good to see you. Soul Warrior, what's up? The little birdie sent you. Yeah, we got those out there everywhere. But welcome. Good to see you. Hello, Colleen. What's up, lady? Good to see you. And voiceover with Stephanie Marie. How are you, dear? Good to see you. Jackie, nothing missing, nothing broken, sweetie. So let me see. I think open-minded. Good to see you as well. Um, Emerald Eagle, good to see you. Love to you as well. Boy, it's so many people out there. So anyway, Susie Q, what's up? So I'm either an hour different, it ain't my fault. As I said, I wouldn't mind that on June, 20th, that it would be the sun would come up at 4:25, 28 in the morning. I wouldn't mind that. I'm an early bird riser anyway. It's like that song by Supertramp. I'm an early morning riser, um, and he basically says, "Hey, got the favor on me." So, what's up, to Serena? Hello, Josh. Good to see you, Lori. Hello, El Gapo. Chris, good to see you. Yeah, she was going to grandmother's house. Yeah. I mean, it all depends on how you look at it. What was her motivation? Was she, that innocent to begin with? And then you got to think about the grandmother. Did the grandmother know? You know, why is the grandmother living in such a bad part of the forest to begin? What is she doing in the forest? I'll tell you, my suspicion is she's a witch. That's all I got to say, which is not a negative connotation. Wise woman. But that just another take on it, right? K-Town, Cosmic Gypsy, what's up? Good day to you as well. Know thyself. Hello, Vampy Goddess. Good to see you. So I was looking sharp. Yeah, I was out working all day. Scotty got a brand new, powerful mower. So I had to go out and get used to that. I mean, if you're used to the steering wheel, no problem. But, when you have the independent guide bars. That's what's so freaking cool. And when they say that these things turn on a 0 point radius, they lie. If you're not too careful, it could actually throw you out of the freaking seat. So anyway, Warrior, what's up? Good to see you. What's on the subject today? Well, things are not what they always appear to be. Isn't it true? Lot of that going on. I see what's happening in this country, and wow, it's a trip. Definitely a trip because somebody is lying to somebody. And depends on which side you're thinking who's lied and who hasn't lied. Don't know. It seems interesting that our species, um, we lie very naturally. We lie to ourselves. We lie to others. I mean, what's up with that? So, got an interesting paper I wanted to share with y'all. And Gilbert, I was thinking of you on this. Hello, Elderberry. Good to see you, brother. And Joyce, hello. Um, so it just got me, and I think it is so apropos to this uh, topic of the day. So this is a great little white paper talked about. It is the eco-consciousness, species connectedness, and psychedelics. All right, does that got your attention? So this guy writes, he said, on my travels in Mexico many years ago, last millennia, in fact, yeah, I can dig that. I came across a psychoactive plant known locally as the shepherdess. Now, has anyone heard of this plant? So, which was used by indigenous people for divination and healing. Now, this is just my personal opinion, but if you've never taken psychedelics, don't judge anyone who has, because the ones who have, they have been immersed into another realm of reality that coexist right here at the same time. I'm going to do a show again because we were out somewhere and saw a shadow person, clear as freaking daylight, an actual shadow. And if y'all remember, 3, 4 years ago, did a show on that, and I am more convinced than ever that they're an actual species. Now, I don't know if they have a connectedness to a different realm, a different reality that has basically implanted itself into this reality, or are we the ones who are implanted in ourselves? But nevertheless, let me know in the chat room. And if you're listening to this on replay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And thank you for, let's see, feeding the algorithm. Thank you guys for hitting the like button because by percentage, it is, it works in their system. And make sure you're, subscribed. Appreciate it. So, those of us who have been there, we know. Now, some have, just occasionally partook of a particular psychoactive element. Other of us, we deep dived and came out smelling like a rose. And God, was that not freaking far out? I mean, I can look back, and many of you can, and we talk about this often because it was a very part real of my life. Um, at the age that I was deeply into this is usually the age that most people are in high school, they're doing the whole thing. I didn't do that. I was out on the street, I was selling drugs, and I mean by drugs, mostly it was pot, LSD, mescaline, primarily that was it. Yeah. Anyway, occasionally mushrooms, but eh. Um, he said, I was given the opportunity to try this foreign foliage. I love this. Like this person writes, and doing so had an incredible and entirely unexpected experience. Within moments of consuming the herb, a strange sensation began seeping through my toes and fingertips. And now, isn't that interesting? Yeah. Wonder why. I don't know. Do you find them connecting points? I think so. And move towards my core, turning me rapidly into some kind of thorn bush. So, my question to everyone out there listening, if you were to have to make a choice, what kind of a plant would you be right now? Tell me in the chat room if you're listening in it. I'm not, you know, interrupting the convo going on. But what type of plant would you be? Would you be a tree? Would you be an herb? Would you, what would you be? Well, this guy became a thorn bush, which I thought was so interesting. The metamorphosis spread quickly up my arms and legs, across my body, and up to my head until I found myself completely transformed into a small, spiky shrub. And it's interesting because what are thorns and spikes? Well, typically they're a defense mechanism, right? Hmm. I wonder how many of us have thorns. Caution when taking, right? It's like, yeah. I was quite literally rooted to the spot and could not move. I can dig that. Yeah. You ever found yourself, you suddenly realize you've been standing in the same spot in the same position? Sure. I call that spontaneous astral projecting. Uh, and which, if you've ever astral projected, it's kind of a side effect. Yeah. Because you see, you've been out there, as the Moody Blues said, you've been out there and you've came back again. Hmm. And what we found is that it's filled with life. This so-called void is anything but lifeless. Simultaneous to this, all the trees and all the plants, in fact, every blade of grass across the large field within view, began laughing hysterically. Anything and everything before me that photosynthesized was in side splitting fits, and they were all cracking lines like, now you know what it's like to be a plant. Ha, ha, ha. Swaying back and forth, shrieking and howling with laughter. Have y'all seen those videos of trees moving? Literally, trees moving. I contend we don't know much about the plant life either. It looks like I have frozen up, and it looks like I am. Well, how about that? Let me see. Give me 1 second here, folks, as I have to stop, and then we'll go out there and we'll come back in here. Now we're all back to normal. Everything cool? You see what happens? Yeah. Start sharing, real Gnosis and things go weird. So, and as I was out working today, I mean, got up early and it's like I'm seeing this rebirth of nature everywhere. And it reminded me just how alive everything is besides myself. Learn to talk to your plants. They might talk back, right? I didn't find this particularly funny, though, because I was absolutely convinced of my transmutation and furthermore believed it to be permanent. Well, that's a bad place. I worked in a volunteer house in the Montrose area in Houston, Texas, 1971, 72, that time frame. And I would be there at night to help the people who had bad trips calm back down, bring them back down into their reality. And it was one other thing I found that most people was afraid of, that they were going to stay in this alternate reality. And of course, everything got better, right? Um, and furthermore, believed it to be permanent. And how the plants laughed. Then a disembodied voice spoke, loud, deep, and stern, a woman's voice. She said something like, "You stupid humans think you run the show around here. You're so arrogant, but you haven't got a clue." And then she proceeded to lecture me on species centerism and our lack of harmony with others on Earth. Now, I would say, with the like-mindedness of people who are in here, that who was that speaking? I wonder if it was the great dark goddess, or maybe one of her creations. But I have no doubt that it was real. No, not a fact. So the plant, and I have a feeling it's not only the plant kingdom, I think it's the animal kingdom that look at us humans. Every other animal on this planet seems to have this harmonious balance, you know? It's humans that can't get their poop together. It's amazing. We're the ones who start the wars. We're the ones who start the pestilence, the disease. Many times, I think it's just the kingdoms coming in and, number one, defending themselves, because we've obliterated so many on both sides, animal and plant kingdom, that they look at us as the enemy. Very few humans actually live in balance with nature, whether it be the plant kingdom or the animal kingdom. It's interesting. I live somewhat out in the country, and I am just in awe of the wildlife, and how it's amazing how nature, in her creations, how they'll look at you, your spirit, your energy. And I love the fact that I have deer now that trust me enough that they bring their offspring up. And it's quite interesting. But we haven't got a clue, and I think that may be right. Um, I was terrified and bewildered in the literally sense too, for although I had hypothetically reasoned that everything might be inherently conscious, I never expected to be chastised by the spirit of nature or publicly ridiculed by grass. I have no doubt that they have laughed their ass off where I'm concerned. I'll just be honest. I mean, yeah. Yeah. Uh, and you got those people too who can't seem to grow anything. Not sure why, right? The experience, mercifully, only lasted 10 minutes and quickly subsided as the voice drifted away and I turned back into a slightly more aptly named Homo sapiens than before. The immediate psychological effect had gone, but the ontological shock remained indefinitely. I would say that this was my first serious shamanic experience with plant or fungal psychedelics. And since then, I have never considered ecology in quite the same way as before. So, what then of psychedelic experiences and species connectedness? And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but basically, we know this that, and this is just my assessment over the 25,000 plus days I've been on this planet. Um, there is a part of us that can be stimulated by psychoactive compounds that have this escalator effect. And the next thing you know, you're in different realities. You're still connected here to a degree, unless you have one of those. Um, and I remember this distinctly, one of those spontaneous spirit projections into the astral realm. And if that happens to you on psychedelics, it's going to get interesting. But this guy went on to say that the fact that throughout all of our history as a species, we have always had the shaman and the shamanesses. I think that's the correct word for female shaman. Um, Medicine woman, medicine man, however you want to take it. And they know something. And they know that if you are to focus the effect in for the purpose of communicating to the other side, to the other realms, um, it can be done. Can be done with regularity. Now, the thing about it is, there is another effect that allows the dopamines to give you to dump, and that gives you the euphoric feeling. And that's what many people, that's as far as they go. And he goes into talking about, this whole thing of the garden, that maybe the eating of the herb, the psychedelic effect is what opened Eve's eyes. Now we know that the story is myth. We're studying the great goddess right now, but it's an interesting take that the serpent, the reptilian race, were very much aware of this, that if you partook of this, um, let's just say it was a peyote cactus or some sort of berry, but when you consumed it and you absorbed the energy within it, it opened that third eye. It opened the perceptions. Just a different take. All right, I'll step out of here because I got more to do on this. Okay, good. I'll come back to that. Bada boom, bada boom. But it is curious as to how we look at things. Because if you think about it, and Jenny, I know you're listening, and she'll be on tomorrow with Trina, and many of you, you're alchemists, you're herbalists. I am. I mean, there's a thing to the herbs, and there's things different aspects of what we would call weeds that are actually highly medicinal. Um, and it just so happens, though, no matter what place you are on this planet, there seems to be a psychoactive plant as well. So if these medicine women, medicine men, the high priest, the high priestess, I mean, you think about the thing that, even in the blood rite called communion, it's supposed to be wine. Well, the fact that even if it's a sip of wine doesn't matter. It's in, and of course the wine is to be interpreted as blood. Now, I don't know this, but I began to think about it. I watched a show over the weekend I thought was interesting, modern day vampires, and it takes them in a different light. that they are actually descendants of you can call them the Holy Ones. Um, but there is something to the energy of the blood. And as a species that happens to find that as nourishment as opposed to, say, what most people would either eat of plant or of flesh, they just see it as the different way. In fact, if you look at the kosher way of how you have to prepare your food, the bloodletting is very important. There can't be any blood in the meat, right? It's how that's there. Because why? Well, life is in the blood. So if you're a species, long-lived species, you would find that within the blood, it has all the renewing energy it needs to rejuvenate and actually reverse aging. Very interesting show. I mean, I thought whoever wrote this was either a vampire for real or they got some kind of great imagination, creative mind. That's all I can say. Um, and it's just, hello, Gaia. How you doing? Um, I'm just dropping in on the conversation, and every time I do that, it's like this. So, Elderberry, you took 4 hits of window paint. I bet you were out there. Yeah. Don't know if I do that. I mean, um, yeah, I had a really good chemist friend. He was a student at the University of Houston back in the day. And I tell you what, that dude, wow, he had a recipe down that was far freaking out. Um, but anyway, as I'm reading this. So, what do you think about that? Guy, how are you and Paul doing? Thank you, darling. Um, yeah, it's Scotty Boy, so that's way out there. Yeah, that'll light your fire. I mean, in fact, it's interesting because it was clear light. It wasn't window pane. But every time I have taken window pane acid, it looks like it's a piece of film, very tiny. Yes. Wonder where the lions are. That's all I've got to say. Uh, Bonnie's like, didn't anyone warn you? Yeah, it's like, what the freak? But anyway, I just thought that was interesting. A completely different take on what has been this, myth. And as I finished watching this, and I told Lynn that and I said, hon, I said, it's really quite interesting how limited we are in our frame of reality, what our perspective is. And though we are somewhat impacted, you know, by it, there's still this core framework. This is reality. And we don't go beyond that because then that becomes an altered reality. And altered realities are basically realities that we have not spent building. So I love the fact that if you keep this open mind and you look at things from as many different perspectives as you can, now I'm beginning to think, well, maybe there is, in fact, an actual, because I'm convinced that not all bodies are filled with what we call humans. Higher intelligence would know how to manipulate this body far better than the occupant that's in it. And to think that 50 years of Bible teaching, right? Ministry work. And, I came from that side where the power was the blood. You plead the blood of Jesus, and I'm going to tell you what, you know, they got to listen to you. I plead the blood of Jesus and rebuke you, Satan. Yeah. But anyway, the point is, and I did that one series, the Blood Covenant, how this God this male patriarchal deity is a god that, hear me out, could be potentially the first vampire. Because if you think about it, if humans were the first to have blood, now you have to say, well, what about the animals? I don't know. They didn't talk about the animals. But I get where you're saying. But back to us humans, because we're supposedly have a living soul. So you look at it, it's all about the blood. Everything's about the blood. Abel, first thing we find out, blood, ground, calling out. Then, Yahweh comes and meets Abram, and what do? Blood, cut that, bull right up the middle, walk around in its entrails, get that blood really going. And once you got all that blood all over you, you walk out of it. And then this God, Yahweh, is going to come in and he's going to vaporize it. And then, even when you look at Solomon, when he had the power over the jinn, Asmodeus was one that Solomon captured, and Asmodeus was the king of the daemons. And, if you've studied, and we're going to study a little bit more about Asmodeus because it's interesting. But once the temple was done, and Solomon then released the demons and the jinn, what happened? For like 7 days, those priests on the sacrificial altar before this god, they said that the blood flowed out of Jerusalem down from the temple for, 7, 10 days. That's how much blood was being shed. That's some wild shit, man. Now, think about it. Think if you were a rogue group, could be could be interpreted as maybe fallen angels, that maybe the true source of existence, because I don't know what would happen once you get integrated to the blood, but that blood would provide everything you would need. You would be a demigod. You would be mortal, immortal. Hmm, think about that. So you would be around for every generation. Hmm. Now think about it. There's a direct tie to this God that's tied to blood, that has the whole blood thing. I mean, remember in Jesus, it was said about the shedding of the blood. Getting back to the communion thing, it's about drinking the blood. It's just odd that you would then have the antithesis of that in the mythos of vampires. But what if they actually do exist? What if, in fact, vampires are in the key points of the highest points of power on this planet? I mean, if you have immortality, in a sense, a semi-immortality, you would be able to manipulate everything. Everything. There's not nothing on this planet that you would not be able to be involved in. You could have wealth that they say that there's one family that truly owns the United States. They're worth, I saw some ridiculous number, like $187.5 trillion. And it's this family. And there's apparently other families. And I'm thinking after seeing this, and I'm going, holy crap. You would never know. They could appear to be old, but then very quickly they can revert back to whatever age they want to be. You'd never know it. So, anyway, just a little side thought, you know, because It's very possible. In fact, I had the strangest freaking dream on this, and I know that it was caused by this conversation we're having now, but previous by seeing this, and I'm going, you know, how would you know the difference? They could take a blood test, wouldn't matter. You wouldn't know. Our science wouldn't know. They're in charge of the science. They're in charge of everything. And they literally they can't be killed. They can't. They have this amazing way that it appears that they have this ability to coexist into what I would call the firmament to terra firma. And so they are truly, in the sense, immortal. It's just a thought. And how would we know the difference? You and I are going to be gone like that. We transcend into wherever that leads. But what if you, as a species, now it's interesting because in this they do give birth. It's they're just a different species. They have different laws. They have a different physiology in the fact that their substance is not needed through the consumption of actual food. I don't know. See, we've talked about adrenochrome. Yeah, yeah, absolutely truth. Yeah, Lauren, you're right. They do play the long game. I once heard in a symposium I was at, and it's interesting because if you look at this, there's a difference between a person who can look at things and putting together a strategy. But a strategy is not a strategist. A strategist typically looks on centuries, millennia. That's how they play their game. That's how strategic they are. And doesn't it seem odd that, again, with this male entity coming into this reality, and then we have this, who knows, subspecies? Yeah. Mm-mm-mm-mm. How would you know? You wouldn't. And then it makes me think, well, what if there's other species like that? I mean, if it happened once, the universe is a pretty big place. What if, in fact, and there have been enough Hollywood B-rated shows, actually some were pretty good, of just that theme, that there's something about our blood, human blood. But I wonder how they deal with disease. Well, I think that they have the ability that they would not need that. So anyway, um, know thyself. You took 9 hits. What the freak? Yeah, that will. Boy, that'll give you some whiplash. So we're studying a lot at the same time here, and we're going to get more into this book. Doot, 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 as we continue down this road. Uh, this is that when God was female, when God was a woman. And I just wanted to touch into this because they're really interesting again. Um, because we seem to be dominated by this, I don't know what it is, nature. It says man enjoys the great advantage of having a God endorse the code he writes. And since man exercises a sovereign authority over women, it is especially fortunate that his authority has been vested in him by the supreme being. If I, if I was a woman, it just would piss me off every time I heard this. For the Jews, the Mohammedans, the Christians, among others, man is master by divine right. The fear of God will therefore repress any impulse towards revolt in the downtrodden female. Simone de Beauvoir, The Second Sex, 1949. And it's true. I'm writing because there's a lot coming to me on this, and it's interesting. So we perceive the supreme being, and that holds true in, like I said, many different Kabbalistic beliefs, the Golden Dawn, just a whole host. And it's always centered on the masculine, and it's always centered on from this God. This God is not only in control of the religions, but he is in control of the occult. I believe there is a fraction now separating from that and saying, I don't like your magic. I don't like your ideology, don't like your philosophy, and I sure the hell don't like your theology. There is a purpose for us, and people have sent me a number of things, and thank you. Um, and of all the different fractals, so to speak, of the divine dark mother goddess, it's quite interesting that no one has been able to coalesce all of that and produce something that, because we humans, we like to have something tangible. That's why most churches are dead now. There's nothing tangible there. In times past, there was something there. It was, in fact, tangible. It was powerful. You could see it in action. And I believe that if we could just think the cooperation of Mom, Mother Goddess, wonder what we would get after that. But again, the repression of the feminine. We had a chance over the weekend to have some really good conversation. And I'm finding out it doesn't take that much to get people drawn in, because I only spent like 3 or 4 minutes just bringing out some very quick facts about the current belief systems and how we become under this spell and then we accept it as normal. And it's interesting when people start to think, and it's that point of ignition that they come very much quickly and they begin to see, yeah, that you're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. Says in his statement opposed to the ordination of women, Bishop C.L. Myers said of the Episcopalian priesthood is a masculine conception. True. A priest is a God symbol, whether he likes it or not. In the imaginary of both the Old and New Testament, God is represented in masculine imagery. He said in a statement that was circulated among some 760 delegates at Grace Cathedral for the 2.5 day convention, Christ is the source of priesthood. The sexuality of Christ is no accident, nor in his masculinity incidental. This is the divine choice, the statement said. Article from the San Francisco Chronicle, 1971. You know, we had the thing there in the late 60s and 70s, the sexual revolution. Feminism was coming out of the closet, was taking its rightful stand, and it was squashed. And today, the divine feminine has been reduced to even a lower position. That ain't right. That ain't right at all. And so we've got this so-called God that is supposedly a God of love, unless you're a woman. In the beginning, there was Isis, oldest of the old. She was the goddess from whom all becoming arose. She was the great lady, mistress of the two lands of Egypt, mistress of shelter, mistress of heaven, mistress of the house of life, mistress of the word of God. She was the unique. In all her great and wonderful works, she was a wiser magician and more excellent than any other god. Thebes of Egypt, 14th century BC. And someone sent me this really good email, was talking about how this change took place. That where it was the goddess to begin with. Think about it. All philosophy, all magic, everything was birthed out of the divine feminine, her words, her teachings, and how now we see this to where they again, as in the scene of the Exodus, when Pharaoh wiped the name of Moses off of everything. And I thought, how interesting that that is exactly what they did. This is thou sun goddess of Arena, art an honored deity. Thy name is held high among names. Thy divinity is held high among the deities. Nay, among the deities, thou alone, O sun goddess, art honored. Great art thou alone, O sun goddess of Arena. Nay, compared to thee, no other deity has a honor is as honored or great. They knew something. Babylon, 18th century. Okay. Um, Unto her, and isn't it interesting about Babylon? Because today, and in my studies, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but because I don't think I am, but all the studies I've studied about Mesopotamia, and particularly Babylon, um, it was King Nebuchadnezzar. It was Nebuchadnezzar who came in and sacked the first temple, took the children of Israel captive, and when they came back, they were known as Jews. Started out as Hebrews, then the children of Israel, and then Jewish. And the thing about it is, you only even, the book of Daniel is about Daniel when he was in the captivity in Babylon. And depending on, and when I look back now, I'm going, there is some strong magic there. But what we're finding out is that it was only half of the story. There was the goddess, but she's been removed. It says, unto her who renders decision, goddess of all things, unto the lady of heaven and earth, who receives supplication, unto her who hears petition, who entertains prayer, unto the compassionate goddess who loves righteousness, Ishtar the queen, who suppresses all that is confused, to the queen of heaven, the goddess of the universe, the one who walked in terrible chaos and brought life by the law of love, and out of chaos brought us harmony, and from chaos thou hast led us by the hand. Babylon, 18th to 7th century BC. Sumer, hear, O ye regions, and praise the queen Nana. Magnify the greatness, exalt and dignify, exalt the glorious one, draw nigh to the mighty lady. I gotta watch my time here. So, obviously, something took place. And it's interesting because I can't find anyone who can, and it's even myself, I'm puzzled by this. When did this incursion take place? We don't seem to have a memory of it. And why? We have shards, we have threads, but it's never been unified. Why? And again, exactly when did this start? And if this is the cause and effect, then what the freak happened? I just have this sense within me, and I have nothing to base this on, but I don't think it was peaceful. I don't think it was pretty at all. I think it was, if I can use the term, bloody. It had to be a war unlike any other war, and it tells me I don't think it's over. She's here, and I believe that she is gaining strength. And boy, when she gets fully charged, and here even the author comes in and says, well, how did it actually happen? How did men initially gain the control that now allows them to regulate the world in matters as vastly diverse as deciding which wars will be fought, when, to what time dinner should be served? I mean, when did this happen? I mean, we maybe we've got clues, you know. Lilith said, there's no way I'm going to be on the bottom. Mm-mm, not going to happen. Is that a clue to what really did happen in a much bigger way? I don't know. Anyway, the author says this book is the result of my reactions to these and similar questions, which many of us concerned about the status of women in our society have been asking ourselves and each other. As if in the answer to our queries, yet another question presents itself. What else might we expect in a society that for centuries has taught young children, both female and male, that a male deity created the universe and all that is in it, produced man in his own divine image, and then, as an afterthought, created woman to obediently help man in his endeavors? The image of Eve created for her husband, from her husband, the woman who was supposed to have brought about the downfall of humankind, has in many ways become the image of all women. How did this idea ever come into being? Few people who live in societies where Christianity, Judaism, or Islam are followed remained unaware of the tale of Eve heeding the word of the serpent in the Garden of Eden, eating the forbidden fruit, and then tempting Adam to do the same. Generally, during the most impressionable years of childhood, we are taught that it was this act of eating the tasty fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil that caused the loss of paradise, the expulsion of Adam and Eve, thus all humankind, from this first home of bliss and contentment. We are also made to understand that as a result of this act, it was decreed by God that woman must submit to the dominance of man, who was at the time divinely presented with the right to rule over her. From that moment until now, this is still happening today, folks. When did it start? Tell me when. I don't think you know. I don't think I know. It's been wiped out. The expulsion of Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden is not exactly the latest news, but few contemporary happenings have affected women of today any more directly. What if it didn't happen at all? But yet we still have the effect. Ladies, this is something that y'all just need to get your poop together and say, starting to change, I believe. In the struggle to achieve equal status for women in a society still permeated by the values and moralities of Judeo Christian beliefs, which have penetrated deeply into even the most secular aspects of our contemporary civilization. We soon realize that a thorough examination of this creation legend, alongside its historical origins, provides us with vital information. It allows us to comprehend the role that contemporary religions have played in the initial and continual oppression and subjugation of women. And the reason for this is what? And I'm looking at my time and I'm going, Eesh. Um, we'll pick up on this. But the question still remains, how would you answer that? So I get back in here. Hi, folks. How y'all doing? It's just it's everywhere. I mean, it really is. Even from a male's perspective, I'm so limited in that frame of reality because, it's I sense the difference that it had to be there at one time. There had to be this equality that existed. Because to me, that would be the wisdom of the goddess. And I can see within her a role for the masculine, not the dominance, but a role. But the goddess would never be subjected or subjugated to another entity, which tells me, and I'm just speculating here, and we haven't been told the story. It's not in our religion. It's not into our cult. It's not into the mystery schools. None of that. Something is not right. And I got bookshelves of you name it. And 99% of all the occult books and references and what have you is male dominant. Less than a handful has a different perspective. What does that tell you? So, anyway, that's are my thoughts for this particular afternoon. Actually, I got a lot more because it tells me that if we could program the computer and the navigation and said, this is where we want to go. We have a destination now, and we want to meet that destination. I just got a sense that, she would respond. This book I'm reading is very, and you're going to share in it too. She actually manifested before this person who was writing this. And as I began to look into that over the weekend, it appears that she does manifest physically. And why wouldn't she? It would seem to me that the more who give conscious awareness to her with respect, admiration, may I add, in awe, like, wow, I think and when we did our journeys, people say we're going to get back into this, but there was a reason why things went the way they did, and it's all for that purpose. But if y'all remember, and I went back, and back in November, the goddess appeared to me. Remember the dream where Mercury was there, Hermes, but she was there. She was very dominant. Yeah. So, see, Gaia, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So I'm just saying, you know, I think it's just far out that I can meet with a group of like-minded spirit beings, and even when we're in our, you know, newbies, neophytes, but yet the results that we achieve are freaking outstanding. Maybe we're further along than what we realize. I don't know. Jim, how are you doing? Good to see you. I haven't seen a lot of this. Peggy, good to see you. Clan of the Cave Bear series, based on historical fiction. I'll have to check that out. Um, Susie Q says it's time to take out the kale, the cabbage, the spinach, and the radishes. Yeah. Well, all right. That's my thoughts for the day. Actually, I'm going to go out and start doing more yard work. That's all I got to say. It's there, and it's time to do it. So we'll be on tomorrow and make Gaia beautiful again. I like that. Yeah. Deborah says she loved the series. I'm gonna have to check that out. Well, cool. But let me know, seriously. I'll go back and look in the chat room, but it's curious. When did this happen? It had to have happened, and I don't think it was gradual. I think it was sudden, and I think it was done with force and brutality. I could be wrong, but that's how it is. Thank you, Lost in Space. Right back at you. All right, everybody. Kale is lovely with bacon. Everything is lovely with bacon. Bacon is the candy of, you know, the meat variety, isn't it? Um, I'm not sure even this. Grace says, "Hello, Grace. How you doing, dear?" Yeah, I do believe she is. I think that she is. I think she's been sitting amongst us and going, "They're getting it. They're getting it." Everybody is helping everybody, and no one actually has all the answers, but there's enough that have their answers that when we combine them, wow, the jigsaw puzzle suddenly goes, I know what that is. Yeah. All right. Much love, everybody. Lilith, thank you, darling. Uh, Thank you, dear. I mean, you're going to make me blush. That's very kind of you. And I think that there are more men, real men, that are coming to this conclusion as well. And it's not a threat to any male's masculinity. In fact, it's the elixir of being able to come into the presence of that divine feminine consciousness. It's an honor, you know. You lay your sword before, and it's just an honor to be there. And then, once you have that, and once she says, way to go, then you take that sword and you'll, defend her. But she doesn't need to be defended. At least that's what I'm finding. Don't eat the bacon, Huma says. There we go. Uh, All right, lots of ranch work today. I'm going to be right out there with you, Gaia. So much love, everybody. Thank you again. Thank you for hitting the like button. Thank you for listening. And thank you for sharing your knowledge with everybody and to me, because I grow immensely from you. So I still think that vampire thing, though, has some legs to it. It's just me. All right. Well, and I may bring this up tomorrow with Trina and with Jenny. All right, everybody. Much love. See you tomorrow.